How's it going, everybody? My name is Parallax Abstraction, and welcome to Retro Flashback, showcasing gaming's roots for a new generation. It has been a while, hasn't it? Yes, I've had a whole bunch of stuff keeping me distracted from making videos lately, but I'm back, and we're going to be talking about one today that I've been meaning to do for a while, actually, because it's probably up there in my... maybe even my top 5 favorite arcade games. So we're taking a look today at a classic known as Spy Hunter. We're actually looking at this through the Midway Arcade Origins collection on the Xbox 360, which I did a video on a little while ago if you want to go check that out. This is a pretty good version of it. I actually did compare it with the arcade original, and it's got a couple of sound differences here and there, but very, very minor. Certainly not something that anyone but the most discerning people would have an issue with. So yeah, this is a game that I really like because it's mechanically very different from the way a lot of arcade games are, and I'm going to show you that here. It's going to be a little interesting to talk about this one and play it at the same time, because you have to sort of manage a lot with it, which is kind of what I like. But the idea behind this game is pretty simple. The name Spy Hunter is kind of weird because you technically are the spy, I think. Oh, I screwed that up nicely. I think you are the spy and you're the one being hunted, so it's a little weird. It makes it sound like you're the guy hunting people, but whatever. So yeah, this is a driving game, and it's not really a racing game. I mean, it kind of is because you're racing for score, principally. But it's mostly a combat survival game. So the idea is that you are this little guy here. You are this spy who I presume is... You're not really trying to get anywhere, per se. So I guess maybe you're trying to flee these enemies? I'm not sure what the deal is. There really isn't much of a story behind this game. But the idea is it's a score attack game, and your goal is to try to get as far as possible and take out as many enemies that are trying to stop you as possible. So... as you can see here, you basically, you do have the ability to sort of feather throttle if you want, but most of the time you're going to keep things sort of going full tilt. But where things get a little bit interesting, and you actually have to manage this very, very carefully, is you see down there in the bottom left, there's a gear shifter. So yeah, your car here has... Get away from me, you twit. There we go. Your car has two gears, which I've never seen in any kind of high-performance vehicle before, but hey. So you've got a low gear and a high gear. So in low gear, this is your maximum speed. High gear, that's your maximum speed. As you can see, you obviously can progress through the map much more quickly that way. And in addition to that, you will see there, if you look in the upper left, your score increases by quite a substantial margin when you... when you're in high gear. So you want to try to maintain that as much as you can to make as much progress as you can, but you have to be very, very careful because, as you've seen multiple times already, if you gun it too hard, you can run into other vehicles on the road and kind of knock them off if you want, but if you run too hard and you're in high gear, you will basically do that. Yeah, you'll get yourself crashed, and you don't want that. Now, what's interesting about this game, one of the things that I think makes it mechanically, one of the several things I think makes it mechanically very different, aside from that gear shift, which, by the way, in the original arcade version is an actual shifter that you can sort of slam up and down, which gives you that real good sort of visceral, physical feel with things. I really like that. What's interesting about this game is, in particular, for an arcade game who's, ostensibly about getting your money from you, is that... it's about, the way it doles out lives is very, very different and kind of unique. So you may have seen there at the beginning, or rather you will see very shortly when I do this again. Hey, I got ranking number 1. Trust me, that score I got, not that impressive. The factory high score in this game is not that hard to beat. But... okay. So what's interesting about this game is that you're going to see here, it starts you out with a timer. That you're going to see between the normal score and high score. And that timer, during the period in which that timer is ticking down, it starts at 999. It doesn't tick 1 per second, obviously. It's much, much quicker than that. But you're going to see here that, there it is in the upper middle there. While this is ticking down, you have unlimited lives. So it gives you a very, very generous wind-up period to sort of get familiar with the game and its mechanics. It's a couple of minutes where you can die over and over and over again, and there's no penalty for that, which I think is really, really cool. I mean, and it makes sense when you think about it. I mean, especially when you're not familiar with this game, it's very, very easy to die multiple times. And if it was like a quarter for 3 lives, this game could, after 20 seconds, you could lose your credit, which I'm sure would have turned a lot of people off, and they would have gone, ugh, screw that. So that's kind of what I like about this, is that it gives you a good opportunity to get into things, and then it does turn to lives. So you may have seen in my last playthrough, when I ran out the clock, there was a little car icon that appeared in the top, which is just a standard life counter. So I really, really like the fact that it does that, and because, as you see, the timer doesn't tick down any quicker when you're in high gear, technically, if you're good at this game, you can use that to get a much higher score, which I really like that idea. I kind of wish more arcade games had done that. So you've seen a whole bunch of other stuff going on here. So this is where the game also gets kind of neat. So you see there that I've been able to shoot at the enemies with just a standard machine gun. Now the mechanic of this is that obviously you want to accumulate as much score as you can. And you may have seen me only shooting at certain cars. Well, the reason for that is very simple. There are enemies in this game, but there are also innocents. So the little guys on bikes like that, you know, the sort of sports car, the little thing that looks like a Volkswagen Beetle there, those are all normal, sort of normal civilian cars. And you obviously don't want to take those out. If you do, your penalty is that the score counter stops incrementing for a couple of seconds with each one you take out. So you can kind of juggle things a little bit if you want. You could technically, if your goal is to try to get just to straight up get further in the game or further in the map, and you're not as concerned about score, technically you could strategically take out civilians if you want in order to sort of clear the path for you and make it a little easier to get further ahead. But generally, if you're playing for score, that's not what you want to do. But, you know, there's different strategies and all sorts of other things that lots of different people will employ. And you've also seen there that I've had this sort of big truck coming up numerous times. This big truck that is kind of hilariously invulnerable and can just kind of bash enemies around and whatnot. So yeah, that is a very key mechanic in this game as well. So you see that your car is getting deployed by some secret, you know, stealth truck from your spy agency or whatnot. So as you go along, you'll see trucks come by with different symbols on the top. Oops, you see I took out a civilian there, and there's what happens. So yeah, a truck will come by that basically delivers power-ups for your car. Power-ups like a massive smoke screen, or an oil slick, or missiles, or things like that. And the point of those is very simple. You obviously want to accumulate those, and they allow you to more easily take out certain types of enemies or large crowds of enemies, because there are certain enemies, like these guys for example. These cars here are bulletproof, so they can be more easily bashed around, but that's also the only way to kill them is that you've got to bash them off the road, because if you shoot at them, I'll see if I can do it with this guy up here, but basically if you shoot at them, your bullets just bounce off him. There it is. So you see he's bulletproof like that. And if you have additional things like, for example, oil slicks oh geez. If you have things like oil slicks or smoke screens, you can also run them off the road, and you can do that with the normal cars too. Obviously, as you saw, the thing with the normal cars like those is you can shoot those guys. Aha! And here's the next major part. So you can shoot those guys who have the spikes in their tires, but they have spikes in their tires, so it's a little tricky in that regard. And as you've seen here, I wasn't actually sure if I was going to do this, because this requires you to take a certain route, but as you can see, when you get to certain points in the game, you also turn into a boat, and things become a whole other ball of wax in that situation. As you can see, it's kind of a similar mechanic. I mean, the water really is just kind of the road, but it's a little bit different in terms of how it goes. So I really like that as well, that it sort of changes things up in that regard. And I believe, I may be wrong about this, but I believe you don't get the weapon, any type of weapons vehicle when you're on water, but I could be wrong about that. I played a lot of this game originally on the Commodore 64, and it was a little bit different from the arcade version. I want to say that version didn't have any water ships, but I could be wrong. Sorry, trying to score things a little unwieldy. So yeah, your goal is obviously to survive as long as possible, but also to try to pick up all of those weapons to use them in different ways. As you saw, there are choppers that will come after you, and the only way to take out the choppers is with the missiles that you saw there. The missiles actually don't work against anything else. So you really want to try to juggle things as best you can that way. And the other thing that I really like about this game, and you saw it there when we turned into the boat, is that this game, despite coming out in the early 80s, actually has branching paths, which is not something that you saw very often. So you can actually choose, much like you could in later games like Outrun or other titles like that, you can actually choose to go in different directions if you want. And depending on the directions you go to, it will take you to different levels, which have different layouts, obviously, and even different things like altered weather conditions and things like that, which is really, really interesting. So there's actually multiple ways to play this game. If you wanted to play through this game multiple times, you actually could by taking different paths into different areas. And you saw when I went into the boat there, so you can see there's a new area here. And so when I went into one path, I got the boat, but technically I could have gone another direction if I wanted to, and kept driving on the road if I wanted. So it gives you a lot of player choice and player freedom, which I really, really like. So, now the other thing you're going to see that I really approve of, despite some of the emulation quirkiness of this Midway Arcade Origins version, one of the things you're going to see that I really like there is you see those icons on the left? So this is really nice attention to detail, and I will give the guys at Backbone props for this. So the arcade version of this game, the actual cabinet had physical lights in it. And the lights were simply representative of telling you what you had available to you. So for example, see how the truck is blinking there? So the light being solid was saying, hey, you've got a weapons truck in reserve that you can call up if you want. And it blinking means, hey, the truck is coming. And as you can see there, well, you always had the machine gun, so that's always lit up, but as you can see there, the light indicating that I picked up, the smoke screen is now available. And it was just a very simple thing to indicate what you had available to you, so that they wouldn't clutter up space on the screen. They chose to make those physical lights instead. And I really, really like the fact that this emulated version through Midway Arcade Origins actually keeps those calls, those hardware calls, and actually made them representative through icons on the screen. That is very nice attention to detail. Honestly, it's not necessary. Like, they could have just easily made those some other kind of on-screen icon, or put something else in there to indicate, hey, this is the, this is what's happening, this is what you have available to you. But they actually put in a little panel that looks a lot like the one that was in the arcade cabinet with the proper icons and everything. That's very cool, and that's something you're not going to find in a lot of other versions of this game. That I really, really like that. I think that's very cool. And I think that's a little bit representative as well of the fact that the gentleman who designed this game, which was a guy by the name of George Gomez, who did a couple of other prominent arcade games for Midway, but his main shtick actually has been that afterwards he went on to work on pinball machines. So you can sort of see where a little bit of his thinking in that, his sort of physical engineer thinking, is rooted. He's actually worked on a bunch of different pinball machines. The last one he did was actually the Avengers pinball table for Stern in 2012. I don't know if he still works there or not, but he's done quite a few things. He actually has done far more pinball machines than he's done video games, which I find kind of interesting, especially considering how good this game is. This was not his first game. I want to say it was his fourth. I think he also did Sinistar, which came before this and was another popular Midway title that's also in this pack. But yeah, so you're getting the idea here. This game has especially because of the fact that you can play it a bunch of different ways, and you have a bunch of different weapons available to you and different strategies you can employ, and the fact that it gives you this sort of unlimited lives grace period, which is something I honestly don't know. I'm sure there are other games out there that have done it, but I don't know if I've ever seen another game that does that. I can't think of any, to be honest with you. I haven't played... I don't think I've played anything else that does that. But because of all that, this game has a really addictive, just one more run kind of quality to it. Which you could say about a lot of arcade games. I mean, really, when you think about it, arcade games were designed that way. They were designed to try to keep you feeding money into it by being tough enough but compelling enough that you would be like, oh, I'll just put one more quarter into it. But this really had that effect on me early on, and like I said, I principally played this on the Commodore 64 back in the day, and the C64, if I recall, I should fire that version up at some point. If I recall, that was a pretty decent reproduction of this game, and I played a bazillion hours of it. I know I got really, really good at it at one point. I don't remember what my best score is in this game. I think I did crack 6 figures, but it's a It's really cool, and what I like about this game is it's just mechanically very unique. There are very few other games out there like this that do what it does, and has such a wide variance of ways to play it, and different enemy types and different strategies that you have to employ in order to get really good at it. Here comes the chopper. That chopper doesn't sound entirely right to me either. I think they must have had trouble... Backbone must have had an issue emulating the sound chip in this game or something, because it just... I don't know. It sounds generally okay. Like, this is... I'd happily play this, especially with how easy this is versus playing the arcade game, but it just... Something feels a little bit off, or sounds a little bit off about it. Seems to play fine, and it is a little weird, I have to admit, playing this with an Xbox controller. Another thing I will give them credit for, but ultimately this is really what they would have had to do, is they put the... Screw you, chopper. They actually put, so the gas pedal is your right trigger, which makes sense for most driving games on this system. You steer with the left stick, and you actually just use up and down on the right stick to shift between low and high gear, which I actually really, really like. I think that works very, very well. And of course, this being Midway Arcade Origins, you can rebind everything if you want. But there's sort of the layout there, so it's just the face buttons and that, and it, you know, works pretty well. I could possibly see wanting to map, for convenience sake, maybe mapping your power-ups to the D-pad, but I don't think that would work as well, because you'd have to move your hand from the steering, and the D-pad on the 360 controller, as we all know, is very, very finicky, to put it at its most mildest. But I've sort of shown you the meat and potatoes of this thing. This is still one of my favorite arcade games, bar none, and I could play a ton of this game. It's a really, really good score attack game, and it takes a formula that even when this game came out was fairly well established, and just adds a bunch of different stuff to it that you've never really seen elsewhere. And given the fact that George Gomez had not actually designed many games before this one, it's really a testament to how good he was, and this sort of different way of thinking he had to approach this stuff, and I think it's really cool. I definitely want to try some of that dude's pinball tables out at some point. I think that will be pretty interesting. There was a sequel to this game. Well, there's been a few adaptations of it, shall we say. There was a whoa, geez, stuff's a little busy there. There was a Spy Hunter 2, which is actually also in this package, that came out in 1987. It decided to forego the top-down view like this and make it more of a 3D wow, I screwed that up. Tried to make it more of a 3D perspective, and it had like a co-op element to it. It was absolutely abysmal. George Gomez had nothing to do with that game, and it was just... I applaud, once again, their willingness to experiment, which I guess is what they technically did with this one, but man, that game is awful. It plays bad, it runs bad, it's just like... I mean, if you have this pack, you can see for yourself, but it sucks compared to this, and I do not approve at all. Midway and later Warner Brothers Interactive Entertainment, who bought Midway when they went bankrupt a few years ago, they tried their own adaptations of this. There was a Spy Hunter game for the PS2, Xbox, GameCube, and PC that really just used the name only. It was a really kind of a bad mission driving game. If I recall, it was not very good. And they also had TT Games, who tends to make most of the Lego stuff, actually made a Spy Hunter adaptation for the 3DS and the Vita a little while ago that I have never played. There was very little buzz about it. I think it just kind of came and went, but what little I've heard of it is also not very flattering. So really, you want to play Spy Hunter, this is the one you should play. This is kind of the only one that really matters, which is a damn shame, because I could see this formula being adapted in the modern day to something really, really cool. Maybe someday your truck don't give a damn, son. He's just like, out my way. The fun thing is, too, you can also, if you want, you can also bash the truck and shoot it. And I think you just get the standard points penalty, but it's pretty funny to have your weapons van come in and then shoot it out of the sky. I always thought that was, it was pretty amusing that the game allowed you to do that. You're going down with me, Chopper. So this is really the only Spy Hunter game per se, and it's a darn shame. I really hope maybe an indie developer or something like that takes this sort of base formula and does something cool with it in the modern day, because you really could. But this is kind of the only one out there. But it's It's really unique in what it does, and I really enjoy it. It's, like I said, it's one of my top favorite arcade games, and the good thing is there are a lot of different ways to play it. It is out, there have been versions for 1 billion different platforms, historically, and I believe this is in a couple of other Midway collections that are available for older consoles as well. And you can get it in Midway Arcade Origins, but it's also been out on everything from the original version was out from everything from the PC to the NES to Atari 8-bits to the BBC Micro. It came out on the Palm PDA of all things. It's been everywhere. So it's easy to play this. I think there's even places where you can legally play this free on the web. I think the web archive has this up as well. So I would highly recommend checking it out. It's a great score attack game, a very cool driving game, and it'll get its hooks in you. And I really enjoy it. So yeah, that is Spy Hunter for the arcades, developed by Bally Midway in 1983. We're playing this through Midway Arcade Origins on the Xbox 360, which is a great way to play this game. Maybe not 100% arcade perfect, but it is in all the way that counts, and that's the important part. Yeah, this is a fan-friggin-tastic game, and I definitely recommend checking it out. My name is Parallax Abstraction. Thank you guys very much for watching. If you liked what you saw, please consider liking and subscribing. It does help me out a great deal. At time of recording, my channel has just passed 400 subscribers, so thank you all very much for hanging out and watching my stuff. There's going to be a lot more of it coming soon, and I really enjoy making it, so hopefully you guys are digging watching it too. Thank you guys all very much for watching, and, well, I'll see you guys next time. Take it easy.